Okay, so it's lesson 11. So this is our first fully online lesson of the rest of the semester. So we'll have 2 more online lessons after today, and then our final exam. So you've got your, if you're joining us kind of live and in real time, you can use the WebEx link that I sent out this morning by email. It's also posted on Blackboard. So you can ask questions through the chat. You can even turn on your microphone and ask a question. I'll sort of try to check the chat regularly, but if I miss it and you need me to stop, just turn on your mic and say, hey, Rich, hang on a second. You can also, if you're watching on YouTube, you can use the YouTube video comments, and those will show up in my my StreamYard window here, so I can respond. I did this for my Tuesday class. It worked fairly well. So as I said, you can use either the WebEx session or the YouTube chat to ask questions. So I would say the lesson part will probably be about maybe a couple of hours. It won't take us full 3 hours. It's a little faster online because I'm not pausing to come and look at people's computers, etc. So we'll probably be done sometime around 1 o'clock, and then I will keep the WebEx section open for a while in case people need help or have questions. So just before we get started into today, so also there is no quiz today. I didn't think it made sense to have a review quiz when we haven't been in class for a couple of weeks. So there isn't going to be any quiz this week. There will be a quiz next week. And what I'll do is I'll open that up in the morning, probably 8, 9 a.m. and you will have until midnight, and you just complete that at home on Blackboard. So just before we get into today's lesson, I just want to touch on assignment 2. So part 1, I guess there was a bit of confusion. I got an email. So in the syllabus, I did have for this week, I had the date as March 27th, which is obviously tomorrow. But at the top here, it says week. So a couple students emailed and said, oh, well, we thought that assignment 2 part 1 wasn't due until the 27th, which is tomorrow. It was actually due yesterday. I've gotten about half of them, and the due date on Blackboard and in the assignment documents all say Wednesday the 25th. So please submit. If you submit it by tomorrow, I can allow some grace time because this did say the 27th, but really it should have been submitted by yesterday. So that was part 1. So part 2 is due next Wednesday. So that's week of March 30th. It's not due on March 30th. It's due on the actual date in the assignment. So here were the 2 assignments. So if you're doing option A, I had the due date listed as Wednesday. So for part 2, for option A, your due date is also next Wednesday at 5 p.m. And here's what you need to do. You need to have the functioning register login and log out with your shared header, as well as making sure that your create, edit, and delete pages and functionality are all private. So that's part 2 that's due next week if you're doing option A. If you're doing option B, same due date, again with 4 commits, and here's part 2, you need the user management piece. So you can see a list of users, edit and delete users, and all of these pages must be private. So that's for option B, due next Wednesday. Okay. Again, I'll just sort of regularly jump back to the couple of windows. Does anybody who's online have any questions about the assignment in terms of due dates? Okay, well, I'm not really seeing anything. So what we want to do today is we're going to work with our music library, and we want to add the ability to upload files. So we've been in our database, we've been adding musicians, and we want to be able to upload or attach a picture along with any musician record in the database. So we need to talk a little bit about what this process looks like and how it works. And this slide deck is on Blackboard for you. So it's the file upload slide. So I'm just going to kind of talk through them. Won't take very long. These slides are here for your reference. So we use file uploads all the time. We very often ask users in web applications for the ability to provide files to us. So, some really common examples would be on a social media site like Facebook or Instagram. Users can upload videos, they can upload photos. On a site like Blackboard, you can upload your assignment submissions. Web applications like Gmail, you can upload files to attach those to email messages. So really, really common. Another really common file upload mechanism would be in business when companies have a lot of data that's in a spreadsheet. For example, something like a product list. They want to populate a product catalog. Rather than having to type in and enter a web form and create one product at a time, they already have that list. We may allow them to upload a spreadsheet, and then we can read through and save each record in the spreadsheet to our database. So not every web application is going to have file upload functionality, but an awful lot of them will. So we need to look at the process. In any case, the actual process of how do we upload a file, this is basically going to be the same regardless of what the purpose is or what type of file. Okay. So I got a little bit ahead. I think I mentioned the examples. So the examples I've already mentioned, they're here in the slides. So how does this work? When we've been putting our files on the server so far, we have an FTP login and we use FileZilla, and we can transfer files from our local computer to the web server. But our users the users of our website, they don't have access to do this. So if we want to allow users to upload files, we need a different mechanism. So what we use is we actually will do this through our HTML forms. And we'll build a regular HTML form, but there's going to be a couple of new things in there that we haven't used before. The first thing is our form tag is going to need this new attribute, this encoding type set to multi-part form data. And what this does, so let's say we want to let users upload an image file. So I have a user has a file on their computer, a JPEG file or a PNG file, and they want to upload it to the web server. So what happens is this form data encoding type, what it does is it converts, when the form is submitted, it converts that file to binary. So it translates it into a series of, just checking for comments here, translates it into a series of ones and zeros. Okay, sorry, Josie. I hadn't shared through here. I can enable my screen share here as well. Yes, I sort of assume people were watching the YouTube stream, but that's fine. I can share my screen through. No problem for me to share my screen through WebEx. Just give me a second. Okay. Now, I assume you can see my screen now. Just let me know. Do you see my WebEx window? To access it through YouTube, you can just go to my YouTube channel. Okay. Okay, well, I mean, you should be fine to see it now through WebEx as well, as long as you can see my screen. If you're not able to, let me know. If you're not able to, let me know. And yeah, make sure you keep your microphones off, please, because otherwise my voice will echo back through your computer. So Ginal, if you can turn your mic off, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Okay, so can you see me now? Anybody else? So Jeffrey, Josie, are the screens, is my screen visible? You should be seeing my WebEx window now. Okay, great. Okay, yeah, and at any time, if there's any kind of technical difficulty, just do that, put on a message and let me know. Okay, so you should be able to see my PowerPoint slides now. So I was talking about this encoding type, this ENC type attribute. We want to set it to multi-part form data. Thank you for posting the link, Jeffrey. And then the other thing we need is we need to give the user some ability to pick a file on their machine. So we're going to use an HTML input tag, but we have this new attribute that we haven't used before, this file attribute. And that will allow users to browse their local file system and pick a file that gets uploaded to the server. So that's kind of the form part of it with these two elements. And then when we post our form, what happens is the file automatically gets saved to the web server, but not to a permanent directory. It gets saved into cache. And that file will stay there. I believe it's for 20 minutes. And that gives us some time to check the file, and we can access certain properties of the file. So we're going to be interested in things like, we're going to be interested in the file name. And we'll talk about file naming a bit later. We're going to need to check the file type. So for example, if we're building an image gallery, we want to make sure the user doesn't upload a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, or a PDF instead. We may want to check the size. We may have file size limits. And this is going to show us in bytes, not in kilobytes. We also have access to this property called TMP_name. And this will tell us where the file got uploaded to in cache, so that temporary location. So we're going to want to be able to check these things. And eventually, if we're happy with the file, it's the right file size, right file type, we may want to give it a unique name so files don't get uploaded. And then we're going to want to save that file to the directory where we want it to live. So we may have like a videos file or an images file. Just actually drag this slide down here. Okay, morning. Hung, could you please turn off your camera and your mic?
Yes.
Thank you. No problem. Yeah,
there's something wrong with the link. So like I'm trying to get in. It took me so long. So
there's something wrong. Which link are you referring to?
It took so long that I just got in right now. So like I'm not sure what you said before I get in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to. I started 15 minutes ago, so I've been recording since the beginning. So you can watch the first 15 minutes on YouTube after. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to repeat the last full 15 minutes worth of lesson.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if you also don't mind muting your microphone, that way my voice won't echo through your microphone back to everybody else.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks. So if you have questions, you can just use the chat window in WebEx, and I'll get a notification sound. Okay, Justin, that's a good question. When we're uploading, we'll talk about that. I'm going to come back to your question. It's a good one. Should we just store the links to the files, or should we actually store the files themselves? The answer is we're going to need to do both, and I'll explain. And there are a couple ways we can do this, but there's one way that I would recommend, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So before we save our files permanently, we are going to want to validate these things. One of the other things we're going to want to do is uniquely name the file. So the default behavior of PHP with file uploads is if we upload a file called logo.png, and we put this into a folder that already has a file called logo.png, the default behavior is to overwrite the original file. Now you can imagine what a big problem this would be if Blackboard, a site like Blackboard did this. Many of you might upload the exact same file called assignment1.zip. And the default behavior would be every new upload would just overwrite the last file with that name. So we're probably going to want to uniquely name each file so that if two users upload a file with the same name, the second upload is not overwriting the first upload. So there's a few different ways we can do that as well. So what we're going to do, we can actually use the session, and we have access to the session ID of the user's browser session, and we can include that session ID in the final file name. And then lastly, we're going to use this method, which is called move uploaded file. And that's going to allow us to copy the file out of the temporary location into the folder where that file should live. So we might have an images folder or an uploads folder, whatever directory name we want the final file to live in. One other thing we're going to have to do is our file uploads, once we set it up properly, our code's going to work on our local host, but AWS, like most web servers, they don't have the permission enabled to allow web users to actually create new files. So what we're going to have to do is modify the file permissions, and we can do this through FileZilla. And in the middle, you can see in this screen, it says here, public permissions write. By default on most servers, this public write permission is disabled. So we need to enable it either by checking this box or by changing this numeric value to 757, which checks the box. And then we can also say if we want that permission to cascade down into any subfolders. So we're going to need to do this in order for our file uploads to work successfully on AWS. Now, I'm going to come back to Justin's question. So if we're going to upload images today, we have a couple of different ways we could store the images. One option is we could save the actual image files themselves directly into our database. That's an option. The other option is we could simply upload the images to the web server's file system and store the image path or link in the database. I've found through experience, I actually prefer the second method. If we store the actual file uploads in the database, those file uploads can be really big, and that can make the database grow really quickly and really slow down. So there's probably not a real need to store the actual file uploads in the database. I would prefer to store the files on the file system and just store the link or path in the database. So that's how I'm going to do it. It's not the only way to do it, but I find it's the simplest, and most web applications will do that instead. So Justin, I hope I've answered your question. If not, feel free to post another question around this. So what we're going to do, we're going to first do like a really simple file upload version, and then we'll integrate our file uploads into the existing music library application that we've got. So I'm already connected to my VPN. So you'll want to make sure you get connected to your student VPN connection. And I'm going to start up my local web server. So I'll start my Apache server. And I'm going to open up our music library application in PHP Storm. Okay, great. I'm glad you raised that question, Justin, because that is an important decision we have to make when we're deciding how the file uploads are going to work. So I'm just, excuse me, just waiting for my code editor to open. I know PHP Storm does have an update that I haven't installed yet, so I'm not sure if that's The holdup, excuse me. It doesn't seem very cooperative with me this morning, so let's see what's going on. Oh, okay, finally open up. I'm maybe going to close down a few of my windows. I may have to stop the screen share through WebEx if it slows my computer down too much to have the video stream through StreamYard and YouTube as well as the screen share through WebEx. So we'll see. So I'm going to open up my music library project. Okay, I'm going to stop the screen share through WebEx. So I'm going to keep the session open and I'll keep my audio on through WebEx. But better probably to jump over to YouTube and catch the channel there. If I have to stop WebEx entirely, I will. So maybe just if you want to pull up the video over on YouTube, and once you're there, just add a comment into the comment window so I know you're here. And once everybody's here, we'll carry on. So just find the COMP1006 lesson 11 video on the YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and you can make a comment there. It will show up on my StreamYard window here, and I'll know you're here. So it looks like there's some little delay on YouTube's end. Okay. Hi, Hung. Okay, so you're over here now. That's great. I'll try again. So I can't seem to comment. Okay, so I'm going to continue. So I've got my code editor open. I'll just launch my site in the browser. Right, so here was our music library that we've been working on. So our site's up and running. So I'm going to create a new page, a couple new pages today. So I'm going to make a new PHP file. I'll just call this one file upload.php. This is just a test page, really, so the name is not particularly important. And we'll make a basic file uploader. See how it works. So I'll put on a form tag. Excuse me. We'll set the method equal to post. I'll set the action to, maybe we'll call it save upload.php. So I'll put on a field set and a label. And we'll say upload any file. Then we're going to add an input. I'm going to give it a name of file1. And I'm going to use the type attribute we haven't used before. We want to use the type attribute file. Then we'll just put on a button that says upload now. So here's our file so far, just a simple HTML. The only thing that's new, we've never used before, is this type equals file. The other thing I'm going to add here that we need is this encoding type attribute. So this enc type equals, and I want to pick this value, multi-part form data. And again, this is going to convert that file from its original form, txt, DOC, JPG, whatever the file is. It's going to convert it to binary, to a series of ones and zeros, and transfer a copy of that to the web server. So I'm going to save that form. And then I want to build my save upload.php page where we can test this out. So I can either create this manually. I haven't used this function before in PHP Storm. But notice also if I mouse over, I get this little pop-up window. And one of the suggested fixes for this, it's saying, well, you don't have this page, but there's a little link here that says create the file called saveupload.php. So I'm just going to click on that, and it will automatically create the file with this same name. So you can do that, or you can manually create your saveupload.php. So what we want to do here is start to inspect to see if our file upload worked. I'll create a variable called file. And instead of using the post collection, we're going to use a new built-in PHP collection. We're going to use the files collection. So this will give us access to any file that was uploaded from the form submission. And we called it file1. So this name, files file1, that's got to match the name on our file upload input. So these two have got to match exactly, and it's case sensitive. So now let's check out. We'll create a variable called name. And this file object, it's also an array. And it will give us access to the different properties of the file that got uploaded. So in PHP, uploaded files have a name property. So let's print it out. So if this works correctly, when we save and try to upload a file, whatever file name we uploaded, that's what should get displayed here. So I'll try this out. I'll just try to keep the code up. So I'm going to load this page in the browser, and we'll see what happens. So I'm going to load my file upload PHP form. So here's our new form we've created. Justin, I didn't understand your question. Can you put that on the input element? Can you put what exactly on the input element? Yes, Keon, we're actually going to do this. We can add a file size limit and show the user an error if the file. No, the encrypt is part of the form. It determines how the form is submitted. So that's not an attribute that you can put on an individual input. No, that's only an attribute of the form. So if you see here, if I go to add, there is no ENC, there's no encoding type attribute of an input. It's at the it's only at the form level up here. It's a good question. I'm going to try this out now. Okay, so here's my save page. So I'm going to browse, and I'll try some different files on my computer. So maybe I'll pick a PNG file. And my code isn't quite right, obviously, because I missed the word PHP up here. So I will go back and try again. Okay, so it gives me the original file name. So it was able to properly upload and recognize the file. Well, what happens if I pick maybe a different file type? Maybe I want to pick, you know, a Word document or a PDF or something like this. So let me pick a PDF. So it seems to recognize that. Maybe I'll try one more file type. Here's a JavaScript file. So now I want to show you why. I'm just going to go back to my form, coding type. So I just have a regular method. I'm going to save and try. So now coding type, notice now is gone. I'll pick a file again. And now when I go to upload, it says, oh, for me to be streaming. Okay, I see you all. Okay, so what I will do, I see that the YouTube stream is broken somehow. So I'm going to stop the stream. And I will start a new one. So I'll start a part 2 stream. I'll have to look at how far back I need to go. Okay, so give me a minute and I'll announce on WebEx when